Hello Internet. So winter is finally here and we are expecting our first major blizzard of the year tomorrow. Well, yeah, still tomorrow. So what I thought we'd do is we'd play around a little bit with some snow effects. So what I'm planning on doing is we're going to set up a particle system that is going to be able to follow any object you want around, and it's going to emit dynamic snow that is only going to fall when you're outdoors, and it's not going to fall through terrain or anything fancy like that. So we're going to get started with this. So this is Voxelland terrain. It's a Unity asset. I think it's not super expensive, but it's one of the more expensive terrain assets. So what it does is it creates a voxel terrain. And so what a voxel terrain is it's more or less it's 3D pixels is what you can think of it as. And so this mesh is actually taken from a giant data structure that contains a whole bunch of points, and they're all manipulated, and then a mesh is generated out of that. So I'm using this more because it's an easy way to get a decent looking mesh. This is all pre-generated by it, and it's actually an infinite terrain, so I can keep going. It will have to generate those, which can take a little bit of time, but it can go on forever. And since they're voxels, unlike a height map terrain like you'd get with normal Unity's terrain, with this we can actually make caves, which we're going to use to actually test our outside algorithm. So what I have as well is a really basic snow texture. It's just a hex. I believe it's taken from the standard assets. Could be wrong though. Don't really know where I got the material or got the texture from, but it was already there, so we're using it because why not? So what we need is we need a new particle system. So I'm using Unity 5.5, which just added a bunch of fun new things. They added like trails, which that's probably not that interesting. They also added light, so you can attach a light to your particles. What else did they add? Some noise functions, which we're going to be using to kind of move everything about. So if you look at this, it's applying a noise function. I believe that's the lookup texture for the noise. And then it applies a random positional movement based on that. You can actually do some really cool things. I'm using it in asteroids to do sort of a lightning style effect for the bombs. So you can take that however you want. We are going to be using this, and I'm going to just create another game object quick. And I'm actually going to stick it in our camera and then zero it like that, and then pull it out. And then what you can do is you can put your particle system in there, and if you zero that as well, it'll be in the same position. And now it's parented, so we can move that around. I'm also going to lift it up. Actually, no, we're going to keep it right there because that's all we need for now. So we have our game object, which is just going to sit there. We've got a particle system, which is doing its thing. We need to use gravity a bit, so we're going to use snow. Snow does not fall super fast, and that's sort of one of the things that kind of does sort of that-ish movement, and depending on the forces and stuff, it may even rise or something like that. So we are going to have some gravity, but we're also going to have some other fun stuff. The other thing we want to change, we want to simulate this in world space, and what that gets you is if we move this around, all of our particles that already existed stay where they were. If we did local space, everything is calculated based off of its position in the world, or where it is, and that we don't want that. So if you're walking around, all the snow would kind of follow you, and we want you to be able to walk into it and things like that. So we've got some gravity, looks all right. Let's stick our snowflake render on there. That looks awful. So we're using a standard fade texture. Let's switch that to just an additive particle. Let's actually use a soft particle. And so there's a difference between a soft and a non-soft. Soft particles will fade out when they get they'll use the depth map of your render to actually kind of fade out when they get near terrain or something. So you can see it's a little bit lighter near the terrain. I can actually crank this down or whatever, and it will fade out. So these ones will be really bright still, but the ones near the ground are actually almost gone. So that's what you get with a soft particle effect. So if you need to fade things out, like I think we probably can actually. So we can kind of tweak that a little bit. Let's do like 0.5. And that'll just fade them out a little bit as they get near the ground. So you kind of lose that hitting the ground thing. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to change the size. So we want, snow is all sorts of different sizes. And usually that size is some variety of small. So we're going to do 0.01 and 0.025. May have gone too small. Yeah, way too small. Let's crank that up to 0.5 and like 0.1 or something. So there we go. We've got some snow falling. It's kind of hard to see, so we could make it bigger. I'm not going to. I'm going to do that. So now it's emitting 100 particles a second. So now we have sort of blizzard thing, and it kind of, you're kind of already getting the snow. It's kind of already waving around and all those fun things. There's a few other things we want. External forces. This is going to be wind. So if we want to simulate wind, there's a wind zone, which you can add, and it's going to be way down there. So part of the issue is our terrain is actually relatively tall. So the wind is pointing that way. And so what happens is if I go and select our particle emitter again, you'll notice everything kind of gets blown off course. Let's, just so we can demonstrate this. When you have wind, it adds that force that way. And this affects, if you're using Unity's tree system as well, that shader also takes into effect the wind. And so you'll get a similar effect. It may not look, it may not exactly match, but it'll be pretty close. So I'm gonna turn that back down, but just so we have a little bit of wind and so we know it's accounted for. Right, now that we've got whatever that is, let's actually, so there'll be 10,000 snow particles, and we're going to emit 1,000 a second, I think. Yeah, there we go. Now it looks a little bit more festive and snowy. Looks a little bit like a blizzard. Okay, so we have sort of a snow thing. The issue is, first off, it's emitting out the side. That's bad. We don't want that. So we're going to actually tweak this a bit. I'm going to increase the size of this cone. I'm still going to use a cone, and I'm not sure that's the best solution for this. So there's a bunch of ways we could do it, but I'm going to use something. So I kind of want it to spread out a bit, and that seems to do the trick. But I also want it to rotate. So we're going to aim it down. It really doesn't like it when I rotate it. Something's going super slow. Don't know what it is, but I don't know. My computer's been having all sorts of fun issues, so. Right. So now we have snow coming down. It looks snowy. And so the idea here is that this whole game object is going to just follow your player. Eventually the particle system will be moved up, but the game object will be in the same position as your camera or whatever. And so all you have to do is just track that, or just attach it to the camera if you really want, and it should just work. So the issue here is, one, if we go down here, it is snowing inside of our terrain, which right now isn't a big issue because you can't get down here. But if there's a cave, you can get in those. So we want to fix that. And then there's also the issue of if you're in a cave, we don't want you to emit, or if you're in like some like house or something, we don't want you to emit snow inside of that. That doesn't really make any sense. So there's two things we need to do. One is going to involve just some more particle system stuff. The other one is going to take a bunch of really fun scripting stuff. So we're going to do a collision here. And so I think there's two ways to do collisions. One is with planes, the other is with the world. And so if you use planes, it'll just create a plane in the world based on a transform you give it. And then it won't allow it to go below that. If you use world collisions, it's actually going to take I believe it's a voxel mesh of the terrain around it. And then it's actually going to generate colliders for that. And so things will actually bounce off of or they'll look like they're bouncing off of the real terrain. And you can see that's happening. So if I go down here, there's nothing down here anymore. And now it's all flying off into wherever, which isn't really what we wanted. We wanted, oh, sorry about that. All right, so we have our bounce. Okay, so we have a bounce variable here, and this bounce is going to determine how much it bounces off of the terrain. If we set this up to 1, it's going to take the velocity it hit the terrain with and apply the inverse of that when it hits. So it's going to bounce off with however much force. So if it's like a bouncy ball or whatever the heck it is. But if you turn that all the way down, it's more like a brick, and then so it will hit. And it may kind of slide off to the side or something, but it isn't going to, it's going to lose all the momentum based on the angle it hits at. And my computer is being super slow. What is going on? Okay, just to make this a little bit more performant, I'm going to turn down the particles. And that's, normally I don't think this should be an issue. I think it may be a Unity 5.5 issue. They did just change all the particle stuff, so maybe that's the issue. And you'll see one of the issues that's happening right now. There's a max particles and there's a rate over time. And our life, we have 1,000 max particles and 1,000 that can emit every second. So what's happening here is we are emitting 1,000 particles in a second, but our particles live for 5 seconds, which means we're at our max particles for 4 seconds, which means nothing's emitted for 4 seconds. So we need to drop this by 5. So 200. That should work. And it's still really slow. I don't get it. This is the first time I've had issues with this. It's always worked in the past. So anyway, we want to drop our bounce down to 0. And then we also want to lose some life when that happens as well. And so what this is going to do is it's going to cause it when you collide with something. It's going to cause that particle to live a little bit less long. So I believe it's a scalar between 0 and 1. So if I set it to 1, as soon as it hits something, it's going to lose 100% of its life, which is going to just kill the particle. You can kind of tweak that. We'll just have our snow disappear right away. Eventually, the idea is we'd put down like a snow texture or something, and that would do that. We'll probably actually do a snow shader fairly soon because they're pretty interesting and they're not that hard. So we'll look into that. But this is sort of the particle effect we were going for. It's kind of, due to the way the noise works, it kind of looks like there's a little bit of wind factor in there, or some like, I don't know, currents or something like that. And we also are kind of getting just that spread. So hopefully it will go far enough in front of the player that they won't outrun it. That may become an issue and we may need to tweak it. But we're probably not even going to get to the player in this video, so should be fine. I'm going to rename this game object now to our blizzard. And what we're going to do is we are going to create a new script. And so this script is going to do a few things. It's going to control if our blizzard is activated or not, if our particle system is active or not. So if it's emitting or if it's just waiting for something. And the way it's going to do that is it's going to use I'm thinking it's just going to use a raycast. So we know where our particle system is in the world. We can cast a ray straight up, and if it doesn't hit anything, then it's blue skies and you're fine. If we do hit something, then there's something above you, and so we shouldn't emit anything. I think that'll make sense. The idea here is that you'd have multiple of these particle systems. You wouldn't just have one. You would have like maybe 5 kind of spaced out in like a star pattern or something. And then you'd have a raycast for each of those. And so they'd be spread apart enough so that you'd have, maybe you're standing like on the edge of a cave. If we just have one, what's going to happen is it's just going to be like, oh, you're under a cave and nothing's going to happen. So right at the edge of the cave, you're not going to see anything. And that's not really the right way to do it. We want something to show up. We just don't want it to show up inside the cave. So the way to solve that is multiple emitters. And while that's starting up, we can get started. Why did I call it scripts? You guys are supposed to stop me from being silly. Oh, okay. Well, you didn't. All right. So the idea is we're going to have a blizzard. It's going to cast a raycast. If the ray hits something, then we disable our particle system. If not, then it's enabled. And then the collisions will detect it. So if anything blows over like the mouth of a cave, for example, it will stop that. So let's create a blizzard. I'm just going to call it a blizzard because names are hard. And we'll work from there. That isn't what I wanted. There we go. Okay. So I think each of these is just going to be one. I think it'll just be, well, actually, no, this will work. We can do a public float of the emitter height. And so this is going to be the height above the origin that the object is at. And then there's that it's wanting to target to. And then we're going to have an array of particle systems. Blizzard emitters, we'll call them, I guess. And so the idea is each of these blizzard emitters is going to have a transform. We're going to use the X and Z coordinates. So this plane, this one, we are going to take that and then we're going to cast a ray up. And then if it finds something, then turn it off. And if it didn't, then we're going to move it so it is this far above the current transform of this object at the same X and Z position, just moved up. And so it'll either move up or it'll move somewhere else. I don't think it'll move anywhere else. It'll just stay there. Do we need this? Nope. I don't think we do. Yeah, I don't think that's needed. Okay, so what we're going to do, I'm thinking there. Anyway, what we're going to do is in this update, for each blizzard, that's not what I want to call it, for each particle system in the blizzard emitters, we are going to do array, which is going to be a new ray with the origin of a new vector 3 at the particle systems, particle system transforms position X, and then our current position y. So we're gonna take our y position and factor that into this, but we're gonna take the particle systems x and z. And that way, if we kind of know where it is, and I think this makes sense. Actually, I think we only need to check if it's above it. We don't need any of this. And so the reason we don't is because if there is anything below it, since the particles have collisions, they'll disappear anyway. But if there's anything above it, then we want to stop it. And so that way we won't stop it from emitting over the top of a house, for example. If you're like right next to a house, if we use the player's position, particles won't fall over the house because it will detect there's something there because there is a house. So we want to not have that happen. We want to say, hey, there's this emitter above it. Do your thing. So we're going to do particle system, transform position. And we want, ooh, that's not right. And we want our vector3 dot up. And there we go. Then we just need a raycast hit. I don't even know if we're going to use that. We're probably not actually. But that should be all right. So if there's a physics raycast of our ray that is of the float max value with an out of the hit. I think I got those backwards. Yes, I did. So our out of our hit goes there. This float max value is just the maximum floating point value. So it's just going to cast it all the way up. And if there's nothing above it, then we're good to go. And if there is, then this will find it. This is just going to output. It's like a second output value. The physics raycast is going to return true or false if we hit something. And then this is actually going to return information about what we hit. And then the ray is just our ray that we're casting. So now we know if we're in here, we hit something. So we just want to do our particle system dot is emitting. I think we can just use that. Equals true. No, false. I don't think this is a setter. Yep. Emit. Sub-emitters. Emit. No, 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 no. None of these are right. Pause. Can't set that either, so we need to pause it. Okay. So this is going to get a little bit more complicated than I expected, but if we hit something and if our particle system is not paused, or if it is, yeah, if it's not paused, then pause it. Otherwise, if our particle system is paused, then we want to do a particle system dot unpause. That is not particularly helpful. What does your documentation say? Oh, okay. That's good. I think we want play. I'm gonna guess here because that was super helpful. Maybe this is more useful. Starts the particle system. That's good enough for me. So this is gonna handle a infinite number of particle systems, and if there's a raycast or if there's something above it, it should stop it. So what we should be able to do is grab this. It's going to regenerate the terrain every time we compile, which is a little bit tedious, and part of the reason it does that is because it's recompiling the scripts which control all of this, which cause it to redo all of its stuff. That's one of the less nice things of this whole voxel system, but it's one of the better ones I found, so it's the one I've used. Let's see. We want a blizzard. Yeah, that thing. There we go. Cool. Let's take that, plug in our particle system, and that should be good. And now, if I start this, I should be able to take this cube, move it over it, and then it should stop. And I should be able to move it away, and it should start again. So let's see what happens. Take this. Oh. You know, that wasn't exactly what I had in mind. Okay, so this isn't working. This isn't working at all. We are going to need something else. So let's do stop and start. So the issue is we can't disable the particle system because it's what's displaying everything. So if we disable it, it's just gone. And that's not good for anybody. This is... Okay, let's check out the stop. Play was right next, or whatever was right next to it. So maybe it will be handy. Nope. Okay, we're gonna try play again. Is playing. And so I think we need to invert this because we've got our particle system. If it's playing, we want it stopped. And if it's not playing, we want it started there. Okay. That should do that after a brief recompile. Or not. Argument out of range. Oh, there it goes. Okay. So once this is done, we should, hopefully it'll play a little bit nicer. We don't want to pause the particle system because obviously that literally pauses it. We want to stop it emitting. And so I'm hoping that's what this gets us. But I may be wrong. I don't really know what I'm doing. But we'll see what happens. So it's doing its thing. Then we can take this. Hey, things are still working. And then I can... Ooh, I broke it. Okay, things aren't quite working yet. I'm confused. So it looks like it's like literally stopping. I don't want that. With children, and we want a particle stop. Stop and clear. No, we don't want either of those. So never mind. Particle system particle system remove or resume. No. Huh. Okay. This would be a really good time to go and look at the documentation. That's pretty much what I should be doing right now. We're not going to do that. How do we do this? Play on awake, playback speed, noise, main, loop. Scaling mode, time, trigger. There's all these things here. And none of them are the one I want. I just want to be able to enable emission. That's the one I want. Use emission dot enabled instead. Oh, okay, that's kind of tedious. Well, that's less fun. Okay, so this is something we can use, but it doesn't let us actually just set this because this is a struct, which means it's a value type, which means we can't just change this. We have to recreate this entire thing. Yeah, my enthusiasm is leaking out of me. Can't you feel it? It's fantastic. I really want to do this. Okay. I guess that's sort of our plan of action though. So we're gonna do that. I really wish they had kept the other thing. Okay. Actually, no, we can do this better. We can do this way better. So we can set the emission equal to particle systems emission. We can do emission dot enabled equals true. And then we can set it back. No, we can't. Has no setter. What? But I want it to have a setter. Enabled equals true. True. I said true. Okay. So this is what we want. And Unity is saying we can't have this. Because it's not a variable, and that's true. It's not a variable. This would be way easier if they hadn't used a struct. It would be super easy. But there's no way. Sorry if this isn't, I don't know. It's bugging me. Like we can work around this if we wanted to. But I don't want to. I kind of am curious why this is the way that it is. So there's a clear and a bunch of other stuff. All of this appears to have been structs, which get in the way. Which means I don't know what I'm doing. Enable emission. True. We can get rid of that. So this is deprecated, which means it's going away sometime, but I'm annoyed and it's not working, and now it is. So there. Ha. I don't like that solution at all. But I'm kind of, if it works, then I guess it works. That wasn't really supposed to be the hard part of this. That was supposed to be the easy part. So we can pull this in and then do something. Okay. Any second now it's going to start, and then we're going to be able to test it. There we go. So cube goes over. Ah, that would explain it. Okay. So this is working better because you can see it cuts out as soon as something moves over it. So I think we're ready for the final phase, which is to actually test out the cave. And so to do that, we're going to need to ramp things up a bit, which means more particle systems. I think we're going to go with 4, because 4 is easy to position. So I'm going to delete the cube because that's not needed anymore. And then the blizzard, I'm going to actually add just like a capsule, I think. And that will be, there's our player. Okay. So there's Jim, the player. And now we have our particle systems. Let's position those something like this, I think. And so it'll be sort of corners. Actually, no, we can do this better. We can just do it straight in front and then straight behind, getting really weird numbers. Okay. And then one off to the left, which will be not that way, but we needed that one too, so I'll keep it. And one off over there. And so we have 4 particle systems, and they all kind of go whoosh. So keep in mind, we're going to be down here. So it may look a little bit funky up there. And we can smooth that out a bit. We can widen up the cone up there. Actually, we can't do that. So you can't edit particle systems in mass. It doesn't like that. So we have to do a cone. Let's increase its radius to 5. And that should give us a wider starting area, which will make it seem less clumped. So we should get a little bit better stuff. I'm going to actually use 10. And then so we'll change each of these to 10. And then we'll raise them up. And then we'll make a little cave out of that wall over there. And then we'll see what happens when we go inside it. So that's 10. This shape is 10. That one performs much better than the other one. So does that one. So it's just the first one. Okay. Maybe that's what these index out of bounds are. That's not coming from me. All right. So we have a slightly tilted player. And now we have 4 particle systems. That one's still super slow. Okay. Maybe, nope, didn't go. The index out of range didn't increase, so must be something else. We're going to increase this now and kick it up to 20 feet above. So it should still fall well past the player. But now we've got snow, and you can't even tell there's 4 up there. Well, I can't tell. Maybe you can, but I don't think anybody's going to notice that. They might notice that the particles are appearing just above their head, but you can fix that with some fading and clever stuff too. So we have that. Let's go dig a hole. We're gonna grab our voxel land stuff. Gonna close that, and we want a little bit of a bigger brush. That'll work. And so since these are voxels, we can just literally cut our way in. So it just does that. It's very dark. Let's rotate our sun. Oh, that is not our sun. That is our camera. Okay. It's not that light. There we go. So now we have a cave and a lovely floating rock. Let's get rid of that. Cool. So we've got rock thing. Looks like a cave to me. So what we should be able to do is drop our player in here somewhere. And then the particle system should slowly become active and deactive as he moves around inside there. At least that's the idea. So let's test it and see what happens. I'm hoping this works. If not, who knows what we're going to need to do next. Okay, so we've got our blizzard. And there's our hole. Let's move it over towards that. And so he's going to stand sort of right on the edge here. So our player is inside of our cave. And our cave is leaking. Oops. All right, so that didn't go as planned. I believe what is happening is we are unfortunately having an issue where, yeah, so that one should be emitting. Part of the issue is our particles are actually, since this is so huge, our particles are spawning way inside, which I believe is causing part of the issue. Part of the other issue is I think if you spawn inside of this and do a raycast up, I don't know if that works. We're gonna check here. Is this one emitting? Certainly looks like it, but it could be, yeah. That one is definitely going for it. So things aren't quite working. Lovely. I think the way to fix this, so there's a few ways to fix this. We could just raise them up, or we could lower them down, or we can do some more fancy stuff. And so I think what we're going to do is we're going to reverse this raycast. We're going to start however far up, and we're going to cast down that much. Which means we need a public float vertical ceiling. We'll default that to 100, I think. And so this is actually going to be plus our vector 3 up times the vertical ceiling. And then now we're casting the ray down. So the idea is, what we were doing is we were taking, here's our particle emitter, we want to cast up, and if we hit something, then we'll stop. Now we're saying, here's our particle emitter, if we cast a ray from the sky, what happens? Do we hit it or not? So we're getting a vertical ceiling. We can't use that float max anymore because there's floating point errors and it just won't work. But we can do this, and so we'll be able to say if it's 200 or so, 100 meters, if it's clear skies 100 meters above down, then things are probably all right. And if not, then oops. So that'll obviously need to be tweaked, but we should be able to do this and have our vertical ceiling plugged in here. So this is only going to cast it down however far that is. And everything else should be able to stay the same. So if we hit something, stop. Otherwise, keep going. So I'm going to stop that. It's going to rebuild everything. Actually, just in the scene, I'm just going to bring over our blizzard and bring it into our cave, because that seems like something that's going to have to happen anyway. So we'll drop him in there, like so. And we'll move him a little bit there, so he can kind of chill out. And now let's run it and see what happens. So we should have like 1 or 2 outside that should be emitting, and the other ones shouldn't. is what I'm picturing. But I could be wrong. They all appear to be emitting. Why are you? That doesn't make any sense. Well then, I think this may be an issue I need to take offline because I don't know what's going on. Our raycast should be hitting right there, and that should be causing it to stop. I'm going to do one last thing, and if that doesn't work, then we'll pick it up in the next video. So we've got a void on draw gizmos. We're going to do a gizmos dot. I guess we can draw a line for each of these, like that. And this vector 3 dot down is going to be, we're going to draw a ray. There we go. So we're going to draw those rays to our screen, and hopefully that will tell us something useful. Because if it doesn't, I'm confused. Yeah. Oh. Well, I found the issue. We only had attached one of our emitters to our system. So let me hook up the other things so that this will actually do what we wanted it to. There we go. I bet this will work much better now. I hope it will. That. Okay. Clearly it's late. I should know better. Alright. Stop. Yes. So the ones inside have stopped. That is good. And now we do have a little bit of leaking. And that's just because our particle system that is still active is just slightly inside. And that's because our radius is massive. We can fix that by just not having it be that big. I made it that big so we didn't have to muck around with things. But if you need to use this in your own project, don't make it that big. And there you go, it'll fix it. But now we have snow outside, and everything inside is mostly clear, except for a little bit of snow. But that's fine. Ignore that. It's fine. Okay, but that is a one way, I guess, to get snow that dynamically appears and disappears. Because what we can do now is, since this is just our pseudo player, so we move outside, all those other ones are going to kick off. And as we move further in, they're all going to disable and we're not going to get anything anymore. So it kind of does what we need it to, and then it goes away and does nothing when we don't need it to. So I hope this was interesting. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, let me know in the comments. Let me know what you think. If there's something you want to see, leave that as well, and I'll take a look. But until next time, see you, Internet.